The great hall of the Galactic Council stood silent as Ambassador Zethkar walked to the center platform. His crystal-like body caught the light from 1,000 different stars that shone through the dome above. The representatives from 47 different worlds watched him with growing worry. They had all heard the reports, but seeing Zethkar himself told them how bad things really were. The Velani ambassador had always been calm and peaceful, like his entire species. Now his crystal form shook with fear, and his voice cracked when he spoke. The translator devices around the hall worked to turn his words into languages that all the different aliens could understand. Honored members of the council, Zethkar began, his voice barely above a whisper. My people are dying. Not just my people, but 12 other worlds. The Krillian swarm has come to our systems, and we cannot stop them. A low murmur went through the hall. Everyone knew about the Krillians. They were the nightmare that kept peaceful species awake at night. Living ships that ate entire planets. Creatures that turned everything they touched into more of themselves. The Council had hoped they would never come this far into civilized space. 3 years ago, they hit our outer colonies first, Zethkar continued. We thought it was just raiders. Our defense fleets went to fight them with standard weapons. Energy blasters, shield arrays, stunning devices. The same tools we used to stop pirates and settle small conflicts. He paused, and his crystal body grew darker. Our weapons did nothing. The Krillian ships absorbed our energy blasts. They adapted to our shields. They felt no pain from our stunning weapons. And then they began to feed. The hall grew even quieter. Representatives shifted nervously in their seats. The Helix delegate, a tall being with 6 arms, covered its face with all of them. The small, furry Quillan representative made soft, whimpering sounds. They eat everything, Zethkar said. Plants, animals, people, even the soil and rocks. They break it all down and use it to make more Krillian drones. My homeworld of Valani Prime had 8 billion people last year. Now it has none. They are all gone, turned into those horrible creatures. The council leader, an ancient being called Prime Speaker Yorth, leaned forward. What do your military experts suggest? Surely there must be some way to fight them. Zethkar. Form shook harder. We have tried everything. Plasma cannons, particle beams, gravity weapons, even temporal disruptors. Nothing works for long. They adapt too quickly. What kills one drone only makes the next one stronger. Our greatest scientists have worked day and night to find a solution. They all say the same thing. We need something completely different. What? About the other species who have fought them? Asked the Drex representative, her blue skin turning pale. Surely someone has found a way. All dead, Zethkar replied simply. The Morduk Empire had the strongest military in this region. They lasted 6 months. The Tech Union tried to outthink them with advanced computers and robots. They lasted 4 months. The warrior clans of Breaktor fought them hand to hand with honor and courage. They lasted 2 months. The hall fell completely silent. These were all names they knew. Powerful civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. Now they were just empty space and Krillian feeding grounds. Prime Speaker Yorth stood up slowly. Then what do you propose? If the strongest militaries in the galaxy cannot stop them, what hope do we have? Zethkar looked around the hall at all. The peaceful faces staring at him. These were diplomats, traders, explorers, and scientists. Good people who had built a civilization based on cooperation and understanding. They were not warriors, and they never wanted to be. There is one option, he said quietly, but you will not like it. Speak, Yorth commanded, the humans. The reaction was immediate. Half the representatives started talking at once. Others made sounds of disgust or fear. The Quillen delegate actually hid under his chair. Absolutely not, said the Drex representative. They are savages, barely civilized. They still fight wars. On their own planet. Their world is classified as a Class 12 death world, added the Helix delegate. Everything there tries to kill everything else. The gravity alone would crush most of us. The weather patterns could destroy our ships. Even their plants are poisonous. They have nuclear weapons, whispered the Quillen delegate from under his chair. They actually built weapons designed to destroy entire cities. What kind of species does that? Prime Speaker Yorth raised his hand for silence. The humans are indeed difficult to understand. But why do you think they could help where others have failed? Sethkar stood straighter. Because they are not like us. We build weapons to stun, to disable, to defend. We fight only when we have to, and we try not to cause too much damage. The humans build weapons to kill. They have been fighting and killing each other for their entire history. They know things about warfare that we do not. That is exactly why we should not involve them, the Drex representative said. They are dangerous, unpredictable. If we bring them into our space, who knows what they might do? What they might do, Sethkar said firmly, is save us all. The Krillians are coming here next. Our intelligence shows their main force is only 6 months away from the inner systems. That includes all of your homeworlds. When they arrive, they will eat everything and everyone, just like they did to mine. The hall erupted in nervous chatter again. Representatives started calling their homeworlds on communication devices. Others gathered in small groups to whisper urgently. Prime Speaker Yorth called for order several times before the noise died down. Even if we decided to contact the humans, why would they help us? We have had almost no contact with them. They keep to their own small system and trade with only a few neighboring worlds. Because, Zethkar said, someone told me that humans have a saying. They do not like bullies. The Krillians are the biggest bullies in the galaxy, and they are heading for human space too, eventually. The debate went on for hours. Some representatives argued that the humans were too dangerous to trust. Others said they were too primitive to be useful. A few suggested that maybe the Council should just evacuate everyone to a different galaxy and hope the Krillians did not follow. But as the reports kept coming in and more worlds went silent, the arguments became weaker. Fear was stronger then. Prejudice. Even the most peaceful species could understand math. At the current rate, the Krillians would reach the Council worlds in 6 months. After that, civilization as they knew it would end. Finally, as the artificial day cycle dimmed in the Great Hall, Prime Speaker Yorth called for a vote. All in favor of contacting the human government for military assistance? Slowly, reluctantly, hands and tentacles and other appendages rose around the hall. It was not unanimous, but it was enough. Zethkar felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. It was a small hope, and maybe a foolish one. But it was better than just waiting. To die. The message from the Galactic Council arrived at Luna Base on a quiet Tuesday morning. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his coffee and reading daily reports when his communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Clark, burst into his office. "Sir, you need to see this right now," she said, her face pale with excitement. Jake took the data pad and read the message twice. It was short and formal, the kind of thing governments sent when they were trying not to sound desperate. But Jake had been in the military for 20 years, and he could read between the lines. "Get me Admiral Patricia Hayes at Earth Command," he ordered. Priority 1. Within minutes, Admiral Hayes appeared on his screen. She was a tough woman in her 50s, who had worked her way up from a fighter pilot to commander of Earth's entire space fleet. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes were sharp as laser beams. "Jake, "What's so important that you're using emergency channels?" she asked. "Ma'am, we just got a message from the Galactic Council. They're asking for military help against something called the Krillian Swarm. They say it's an existential threat." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Send me everything. I'll forward it to President Carter immediately." The message reached Earth 3 hours later. President William Carter was in a budget meeting when his secretary interrupted him. Carter was a former Marine who had served in the resource wars before going into politics. When he read the message, his first instinct was to call the Pentagon. "General Lisa Park, get in here now," he said into his phone. General Park arrived within minutes, along with Secretary of Defense Robert Kim and several other top military officials. They all crowded into the Oval Office as Carter explained the situation. "So let me get this straight," General Park said. "These aliens have been ignoring us for 50 years. They think we're primitive savages who can't even stop fighting each other. And now they want our help?" "That's about right," Carter replied. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Secretary Kim leaned forward. "Sir, this could be our chance. We've been trying to get a seat at the Galactic Council for decades. They've always said we're too violent, too unstable. Maybe if we help them with this crisis, they'll finally accept us as equals." "Or maybe it's a trap," General Park countered. "Maybe they want to see what our military can do, so they can plan defenses against us." Carter looked at the message again. "What do we know about this Krillian swarm?" "Not much," admitted Intelligence Director Nancy Lee. "Our sources in alien space are limited, but what we've heard is bad. Entire star systems going dark. Billions of people disappearing. If even half the reports are true, this thing could threaten Earth eventually. How long until it reaches human space?" Carter asked. "Unknown, sir. But if it keeps expanding at the current rate, maybe 10 to 15 years. Carter nodded slowly. "So we have two choices. Help them now, or fight this thing alone later when it's even bigger and stronger." "There's a third choice," General Park said quietly. "We could ignore it completely and hope it goes away." "That's not really a choice," Carter replied. "Not for U.S., not for America. We don't run from fights, especially when innocent people are dying." The debate continued for hours. They brought in scientists, military strategists, and diplomatic experts. Everyone had opinions, but the facts were simple. An unknown enemy was destroying entire civilizations, and Earth might be next. Finally, Carter made his decision. "We're going to help them. But we're not sending a token force to make ourselves look good. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." "What do you mean, sir?" Secretary Kim asked. "I mean, we send everything. Every ship, every weapon, every Marine we can spare. These aliens asked for military assistance. Let's show them what human military assistance looks like." The room fell silent. Admiral Hayes, who had been listening by video link, spoke first. "Sir, that would mean mobilizing the entire fleet. Every battleship, every cruiser, every destroyer. We'd be leaving Earth almost defenseless." "Would we?" Carter asked. "Or would we be taking the fight to the enemy before it gets here? Sometimes the best defense is a good offense." Within hours, Earth's military machine kicked into high gear. Admiral Hayes took personal command of the largest human fleet ever. Assembled, 847 warships began preparing for the longest journey in human history. The flagship was the U.S. Retribution, a massive battleship that had been launched just 2 years earlier. It was over 1 kilometer long and packed with enough firepower to crack a moon. Captain Morrison transferred from Luna Base to take command of the heavy cruiser U.S. Vengeance, while Commander Amy Clark got her own ship, the destroyer U.S. Lightning. But the ships were only part of the response. the cargo holds filled with weapons that made alien observers nervous just to look at them. Nuclear missiles, antimatter torpedoes, kinetic railguns, and plasma cannons. The humans also brought chemical, explosives, biological weapons, and experimental devices that had never been tested in real combat. The Marines came too. 50,000 of Earth's best soldiers, led by Colonel Sam Rodriguez. They brought assault rifles, flamethrowers, rocket launchers, and powered armor suits that could survive in the vacuum of space. Each Marine carried enough ammunition to fight. A small war. News of the deployment spread quickly through human space. The colonies rallied to support the fleet, sending supplies and volunteers. The asteroid mining stations provided raw materials for ammunition. The orbital factories worked around the clock to build spare parts and replacement weapons. 3 weeks after receiving the message, Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s Retribution and watched the largest human armada in history prepare to jump to hyperspace. Nearly 1 million people were involved in the operation, from the crews of the warships to the support staff on the supply vessels. All ships report ready for jump, reported Communications Officer Tony Blake. Admiral Hayes nodded. Signal the fleet. Today we go to war not for conquest or glory, but to protect innocent life. Today we show the galaxy what humans do when monsters threaten the helpless. She paused, looking out at the hundreds of ships surrounding her flagship. All ships, execute jump. Let's go hunting. The fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth orbit empty for the first time in decades. Behind them, the planet's factories began working even harder, building more ships and weapons for the second wave that was already being planned. On the bridge of the U.E.S. Retribution, Admiral Hayes smiled grimly. The aliens had asked for military assistance. They were about to learn that when humans went to war, they didn't just send an army, they sent everything. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Zerion 7 like thunder in the void. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s Retribution and stared at her tactical display. What she saw made her jaw clench with anger. The mining world below them was dying. Huge black ships hung in orbit like metal tumors, each one the size of a city. They were Krillian bioships, and they were feeding. Massive tubes extended from the alien vessels down to the planet's surface, sucking up everything they could find. The beautiful blue-green world that had housed 3 million miners and their families was turning gray and lifeless. How many Krillian ships? Hayes asked her tactical officer. 237 confirmed, Admiral. Plus maybe 50. Smaller ones that look like fighters or scouts. Hayes nodded. The alien fleet outnumbered her forces, but not by much. More importantly, she had something the Krillians had never faced before. Signal all ships, she ordered. Battle formation. Omega. No prisoners, no mercy, no retreat. Across the fleet, human captains acknowledged the order. Captain Morrison on the U.E.'s Vengeance checked his weapon systems one last time. Commander Clark on the U's Lightning powered up her ship's nuclear missiles. Colonel Rodriguez prepared his Marines for boarding actions that would make nightmares seem pleasant. The Vellani fleet hung back at a safe distance, their commander Admiral Kethver watching through sensors. He had seen the humans arrive and felt a mixture of hope and fear. Hope because these Deathworlders might actually help. Fear because he was about to watch his peaceful worldview destroyed forever. Admiral Hayes, came Kethver's voice over the radio. Please wait for tactical coordination. We should study their formations first, plan our approach, minimize casualties. Hayes looked at the dying planet and felt something cold settle in her chest. Admiral Kethver, with respect, that planet has maybe 6 hours before it's completely dead. We don't have time for planning. But the standard protocols require the standard protocols. Hayes interrupted. were written by people who never fought something like this. Watch and learn. She cut the connection and turned to her weapons officer. All ships, commence attack. Target the biggest bioships first. Show these things what humans do to bullies. The UES Retribution fired first. Its main railgun sent a tungsten slug the size of a telephone pole, screaming through space at 15% of light speed. The projectile hit the largest Krillian bioship dead center and punched completely through it. The alien vessel shuddered, then began leaking atmosphere and biofluid into the vacuum. That was the signal the rest of the fleet had been waiting for. 800 human warships opened fire at once. The Krillians had adapted to energy weapons over thousands of battles. Their bio-armor could absorb laser beams, deflect plasma bolts, and even redirect particle streams. But they had never faced simple kinetic weapons delivered with such massive force. Railgun slugs hammered their ships like the fist of an angry god. Nuclear missiles detonated against their hulls, creating miniature suns that burned away their adaptive armor. Antimatter torpedoes turned their largest vessels into expanding clouds of superheated gas. The Krillian response was swift and terrible. Their bioships launched swarms of fighter-sized drones, each one a living weapon that could think and adapt. Thousands of the creatures swarmed toward the human fleet like angry wasps. But the humans were ready for them, too. Point defense systems tracked the incoming drones and filled space with bullets, laser bursts, and explosive shells. Commander Clark's destroyers moved to intercept the largest swarms, their crews treating their ships like guided missiles. All hands abandoned ship in 30 seconds, Clark announced over her ship's intercom. Her crew had drilled this maneuver 100 times. They sealed themselves into armored escape pods and ejected just as the UES Lightning rammed into the center of a Krillian drone formation. The destroyer's nuclear reactor overloaded on impact, creating a fireball that vaporized everything within. 50 kilometers. Clark and her crew watched from their rescue pods as hundreds of enemy drones died in the explosion. Lightning actual to Fleet Command, Clark reported calmly. Target destroyed. Requesting pickup and new ship assignment. Admiral. Hayes almost smiled. That was the 5th destroyer her fleet had lost this way, and they still had plenty more where those came from. The aliens fought like they expected their ships to last forever. Humans built their ships to be expendable. The real breakthrough came when Colonel Rodriguez launched his boarding parties. The Krillians expected enemies to fight from a distance, using energy weapons and defensive shields. They never expected armored humans to cut holes in their hulls and climb inside their ships. "Remember, Marines," Rodriguez said over the radio, as his transport approached the largest bioship. "These things eat people for breakfast. Let's see how they like being the meal for once." The Marines cut through the Krillian hull with plasma torches and poured inside. They found themselves in a nightmare landscape of organic corridors and living walls that tried to grab them. The air was thick with acidic mist that would have killed most alien species instantly. The humans just turned on their environmental suits and kept shooting. Their weapons were simple but effective. Assault rifles firing armor-piercing rounds. Flamethrowers that burned through organic matter like paper. Rocket launchers that could punch holes in reinforced bulkheads. Most importantly, they carried chemical explosives that could destroy the bioship's nervous system. The Krillian drones inside their own ship turned to fight the invaders, but they faced an enemy unlike anything in their experience. The humans moved through toxic environments that should have killed them. They fought in close quarters where their own explosives could harm them. They showed no fear of death and no mercy for their enemies. Sergeant Danny Cooper led his squad through the bioship's central core, planting charges on every vital system they could find. The walls around them pulsed and tried to close off their air supply. Krillian defenders attacked from every direction. Charges set, Cooper reported as his men fought their way back to the exit. 30 seconds to detonation. The Marines reached their transport just as the explosives went off. The massive bioship convulsed like a dying animal, then broke apart in a shower of debris and biofluid. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out on dozens of Krillian vessels. The aliens found their adaptive armor useless against kinetic weapons. Their regenerative abilities couldn't handle chemical explosives planted inside their ships. Their hive mind intelligence had no answer for enemies who treated certain death as just another tactical option. Admiral Hayes watched the battle unfold from her command center and felt a grim satisfaction. The Krillians were learning what every human enemy had learned eventually. Humanity didn't just fight wars. They were very, very good at it. Signal all ships, she ordered. No Krillian vessel leaves this system alive. Hunt them down and destroy them all. The battle for Zarian 7 raged for 18 hours. When it ended, the Krillian fleet was nothing but debris, and the planet below was saved. The human fleet had lost 37 ships and taken heavy casualties, but they had proven something important. The unstoppable Krillian swarm could be stopped. All it took was an enemy willing to match their violence with even greater violence. The Deathworlders had come to war, and they were winning. The news of the human victory at Zarian 7 spread through the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 3 years, the Krillian swarm had been completely destroyed in battle. Not just defeated or driven away, but utterly annihilated. Every single enemy ship had been turned into scrap metal and floating debris. Ambassador Zethkar received the report while standing in the Galactic Council chambers. His crystal form brightened with joy as he read the details. 237 Krillian bioships destroyed. The planet Zarian 7 saved. The human fleet already moving to the next battle zone. This is impossible, whispered the Drex representative. No one defeats the Krillians that completely. They always leave survivors to spread fear. The humans left no survivors, Zethkar replied, his voice filled with wonder. They hunted down every single drone, every scout ship, every escape pod. Admiral Hayes sent a message saying that dead enemies cannot adapt or learn from their mistakes. Prime Speaker Yorth leaned forward in his chair. What are the human casualties? 37 ships lost, approximately 8,000 dead or wounded. Zethkar paused. They consider this a light engagement. The council chamber fell silent. 8,000 beings had died in a single battle, and the humans called it light. These Deathworlders had a very different idea of acceptable losses than the rest of the galaxy. Meanwhile, Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the U-East Retribution as her fleet prepared for the next jump. Earth Command had been sending her constant updates and reinforcements. The Second Fleet under Admiral Robert Kane was only days behind her, bringing even more ships and weapons. Admiral, reported her communications officer. Message from Earth. President Carter wants to speak with you. Personally. Hayes accepted the call. President Carter appeared on her screen, looking tired but determined. Behind him, she could see the flags of Earth's United Nations and the seal of the Global Defense Council. Admiral Hayes, Carter began. Congratulations on your victory. The whole planet is watching the news feeds. You've made us all proud. Thank you, sir. But this is just the beginning. Our intelligence indicates at least 12 more major Krillian fleets in this region. Each one is as large as the force we just destroyed. Carter nodded. That's why I'm calling. Congress has approved unlimited funding for this operation. Every shipyard on Earth and in the colonies is working around the clock. We're building ships faster than we've ever built them before. What about the other nations, sir? Are they supporting this? Every one of them. Russia is contributing their entire fleet. China is building new factories just to make ammunition. The European Union is designing better weapons. Even the smallest countries are sending supplies and volunteers. Carter smiled grimly. Apparently, nobody likes planet-eating aliens. The conversation ended with Carter's final words ringing in. Hayes's ears. Bring them hell, Admiral. The entire human race is behind you. 3 systems away, the Krillian hive mind was experiencing something it had never felt before, genuine confusion. The defeat at Zerion 7 had sent shockwaves through every drone in the swarm. How had these primitive mammals destroyed an entire fleet so easily? The hive mind began analyzing every scrap of data from the battle. It studied human tactics, human weapons, human psychology. What it discovered disturbed it greatly. These creatures fought like the swarm itself, with total commitment and no regard for individual survival. But they were also unpredictable in ways the hive mind could not understand. The swarm had always won through adaptation. Face an energy weapon, develop armor against it. Face a kinetic weapon, create shields to deflect it. But the humans used both kinetic and energy weapons, plus chemical explosives, nuclear devices, biological warfare, and tactics that seemed designed to destroy everything including themselves. For the first time in its existence, the Krillian hive mind felt something approaching fear. Captain Morrison commanded the advanced scouts of the human fleet as they approached the Kithara system. Intelligence reports indicated a major Krillian presence there, possibly including a hive nexus, one of the massive command ships that coordinated entire sectors of the swarm. Contacts on sensors, reported Lieutenant Tony Blake. Looks like 300 Krillian vessels, plus the Nexus ship. It's the size of a small moon. Morrison studied the tactical display. This would be their biggest battle yet. But reinforcements were coming. Admiral Kane's Second Fleet would arrive in 6 hours, bringing fresh ships and experimental weapons that had never been tested in combat. Signal the fleet, Morrison ordered. We wait for backup. When Kane arrives, we hit them with everything. At once. But the Krillians had learned from their defeat at Zerion 7. Instead of waiting in orbit around their target planet, they spread out through the system. They prepared ambush positions and adapted their tactics to counter human weapons. The Battle of Kithara became the largest space engagement in galactic history. Over 1,500 ships fought across multiple planets and asteroid fields. The humans brought their devastating firepower and brutal tactics. The Krillians brought numbers, adaptation, and desperate cunning. Colonel Rodriguez led boarding parties against the hive nexus itself, fighting through corridors filled with acid, poisonous gas, and gravity fields that tried to crush his Marines. Sergeant Cooper and his squad planted nuclear charges in the Nexus's central core while under constant attack from Krillian defenders. Charges are set, Cooper reported as his men fought their way out, but the ship's too big. One detonation won't be enough. Then we plant more, Rodriguez replied. All squads converge on secondary targets. We're going to crack this thing open like an egg. The Marines spread throughout the massive bioship, planting explosives and fighting running battles with Krillian. Drones. Many of them died in the toxic environment or were overwhelmed by superior numbers. But they kept advancing, kept planting charges, kept fighting. When the explosives detonated, the hive nexus died screaming. The massive bioship broke apart in a chain reaction that lit up the entire system. Every Krillian drone connected to the nexus felt its death through their hive mind link. The psychological impact was devastating. For the first time, the swarm began to retreat. Admiral Hayes received reports of Krillian fleets abandoning their positions throughout the region. They were pulling back toward the galactic rim, away from human space and the core worlds of the Council species. They're running, she told her staff. The mighty Krillian swarm is actually running away. But the humans were not content to let them escape. President Carter's orders were clear: pursue and destroy. The galaxy would never be safe while any part of the swarm remained alive. The chase lasted 6 months. Human fleets hunted Krillian remnants across dozens of star systems. They showed no mercy and took no prisoners. Every bioship was destroyed. Every drone eliminated. Every trace of the swarm burned away. When it ended, the Krillian swarm was extinct. A species that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years was completely gone. The humans had not just defeated them, they had wiped them out entirely. The Galactic Council met to formally thank their human allies. Ambassador Zethkar stood before the assembled representatives and tried to find words for what had happened. The humans saved us all, he said simply. But more than that, they have changed us. We can never go back to thinking that peace is the only way. Sometimes, to protect peace, you must be willing to make war. Admiral Hayes attended the ceremony via hologram from her flagship. When asked what payment humanity wanted for their service, she smiled. We want military bases throughout Council space. We want the right to patrol your trade routes. And we want volunteers from your species to join our fleets. She paused. The galaxy is under human protection now. We will not let another Krillian swarm threaten innocent life. The Council agreed unanimously. They had learned that sometimes civilization needed guardians who were willing to do terrible things to terrible enemies. Earth had found its place among the stars, not as explorers or diplomats, but as the galaxy's protectors. The species that others called when the monsters came calling, and in the deepest reaches of space, where no Krillian would ever hunt again, peace reigned under the watchful eyes of the human fleets.